back to the Data Protection Diaries. Today we are on site with probably one of my favourite clients, which is Checkatrade. So we're down in Portsmouth. You can just about see their new funky logo over there. Really interesting conversations we've been having today. We are talking about governance structures under data protection. So how do we make sure that while we're operating as a DPO here, that the rest of the business is understanding what we're doing, and we're getting traction, and we're getting movement, and everyone understands what they need to do and how they need to do it, and we can make sure that the framework is operating effectively. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As always, if you find the video useful or interesting, please do give it a thumbs up, give it a share, and comment down below if you've got any questions. But let's get into what today's video is all about. Okay, so we've moved away from the office because obviously everybody keeps coming out, so we don't want to get in people's way. But as I mentioned, today we are looking at what makes an effective governance structure when you're trying to operate a privacy program or you're trying to operate a data protection framework. What we really try and do, and one of my favourite approaches, is to try and introduce the concept of what we call data protection champions to an organisation. So when I'm operating as a DPO, or I'm providing a DPO service to a company, what I really need to be able to do is understand the context of that organisation, understand what processing activities they are carrying out, and how those processing activities affect the business. Now, the best way for me to do that is to have insider knowledge, and is to get people within the business to provide me with the information on how those things work. So having a network of data protection champions is really, really important for me when I'm implementing a framework, because it just gives me that oversight, and it gives me that insight into how the organisation runs. So when we're looking at introducing controls or introducing policies, we can make sure that those things are really going to work and are really going to be effective for the organisation. And obviously we take care of the training of those champions as well, so we know that they understand what they've got to do. So that to me is ensuring that, from my perspective and from our perspective as an organisation, that we have independence. So as a DPO, whether you're outsourced or whether you're in-house, your role is to be an independent advisor to the organisation. So you are supposed to be providing advice and oversight, and to be able to do that, you need to be able to function autonomously, but you need to be able to be independent. That can be really, really tricky, especially if you are embedded within the organisation. So the next thing that I tend to advise, and the next thing that I look for when we're implementing a privacy framework, is access to the highest levels of management, either through the Audit and Risk Committee, which very often have non-execs on there, so you've got a secondary level of independence, somebody that you can go to. Or I ask for regular meetings with senior management, so that I can produce a quarterly report on how the organisation is doing, what I understand from within the organisation, and then we can start to demonstrate compliance with the framework that we're putting in place, but also compliance with the regulation, and making sure that individuals' rights are being adhered to throughout the business, not just from consumers, but obviously from employees. Looking to establish a good governance structure and establish a good data protection framework is that you have to be visible. There is no point in trying to implement a structure or trying to lead a framework or control a framework if you are not visible to your client, to your customers, to your colleagues. So you need to make sure that you are getting out and about, make sure that you are meeting people, make sure people know who you are and what you look like, because it's much easier for somebody to send an email or to raise a query when they already know who you are and they can put a face to the name, or you've met them, or you've had some kind of interaction. And keeping that interaction going is really, really important when you're looking at establishing a governance structure and a governance framework. The final thing that I always look for, or look to introduce when I'm embedding a framework in an organisation, especially such as this, an organisation of a reasonable size, is metrics. We are always looking for key controls. So what are the things that are important to the business, and how do we monitor those things? So how do we assess that the framework that we've put in place is doing what it's supposed to do? Can we see that SARs are being received? Can we see that they're being actioned in a reasonable time frame? Do we know that we're getting right to be forgotten requests? Are they being handled in an appropriate time frame? Are they being turned down? If they are being turned down, is that being explained to the customer? Is there an audit schedule? Do we understand how often the privacy notices are being updated? Are we confident that the marketing permissions are working effectively? How can we track that? How can we see any complaints? So having a core set of metrics is really, really important for me when you are looking at establishing your data governance and your data privacy, data protection framework within an organisation, and making sure that you've got a forum to report that through. Again, as we talked about earlier, be that sort of an audit and risk committee, or be it an internal data protection forum where your DP champions sit and can get together with your DPO and discuss those metrics and discuss any concerns. You need to make sure that information is being pushed back into the business, otherwise what's the point? So as always, these videos are only ever intended to give you a sort of a brief oversight onto my view on things. If you do have any questions, you'll see our website running across the bottom of the page. You'll also catch my email at the end of this video. Say please, if you do find this video useful, give it a thumbs up, make sure you give it a comment, give it a share, and if you have any questions, please do let us know, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.